Want me to leave the frame?
Just leave the frame.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we'll see how it goes.
I should just make. What is my face doing that? Okay, I'm going.
Blaise, what happened?
What the fuck is this guy doing here?
Today we're joined by Blaise Serra, who is a fantastic magician, fantastic individual. Like, honestly, the stuff that you do is so creative, and it's set in such a high regard that it's really great to work with you, and it's great to have you be a part of this right now.
Well, I really appreciate that. We just went from real silly to real serious. It was 0 to 100 real quick.
I had to switch it up.
I really respect everything that you guys do, and I always look up to you guys and want your opinions on things, because I respect your views on what makes something magical a lot, and also your work ethic with getting stuff done and like actually putting on shows and events. Like, it's pretty awesome that you guys, are so committed to putting magic in its best light.
Well, speaking of putting magic in its best light, or at least a new light, part of the purpose of this whole episode is that we all just took part in our first ever digital magic jam, and we're hanging out with a bunch of other great magicians online, trying to figure out what magic looks like in this crazy new time. I know we've already talked, Jackson and I, a little bit about it in a previous BlogCast, but we're interested to hear, Blaise, you were thinking about that and just sort of all decompressing from that jam a little bit.
Yeah, it was a really cool jam, and I was so surprised by how many people showed up and how many really great magicians that took part in it and wanted to be a part of it. And the majority of the conversation centered around magic and the future of magic in this current era of everyone being stuck at home and needing to adapt to Zoom and video. I think that was like 99% of the conversation was about. There were some really great ideas that were thrown out, Mark Kirstein especially, and then like Nathan had really cool thoughts on card work and how to use sleights that you couldn't do in real life that he had kind of made for the camera. So yeah, all around it was a lot of fun.
For all you out there, we hope you tune in for the next one and join us.
Yeah.
But now, first off, just how are you surviving the quarantine? How's your creative process been affected by that? I know that you do a lot of daily process work.
Yeah, the creative process has been definitely different, and it's been trying to figure out how to move forward. But it's interesting. This past week, things have actually picked up quite a bit, and I've been pretty busy while still at home. But I think that it's been. I've actually really enjoyed this time, to be honest, because it was kind of a lot of rushing from project to project. It was like, oh, I'm going to be doing this show in 3 months. And so now I've got to when any free time that I have, I can't really fully enjoy it because I'm always thinking about this thing that's over my head that, I've got to do. Now that the schedule is wiped up, it's become much more focused on daily goals and daily growth and doing things that I hadn't done for a while, making sure that I'm committed with working out and stay consistent with that every day, and just regular life stuff, but also transitioning more to social media and trying to do for me, I've been trying to post really consistently, doing Instagram and TikTok, and trying to figure out what works. I find that for me at least, it's been interesting that what does really well on TikTok tends not to do as well on Instagram, and vice versa. The posts that do really well on Instagram, I've been finding the following that I have so far accumulated on TikTok, it isn't the same kind of audience. And so trying to find content that is either universally appealing or creating separate content for the different platforms, figuring out what's the best way to go about it. And also I've been talking with this company called Caffeine, which is a live streaming platform that is, I haven't live streamed on it yet, so it isn't an endorsement of it, but I'm going to next week try it out. And they have instantaneous chat, so there's no delay. So then I was thinking that makes interactive magic a lot better, because if you do something like an Instagram Live and you try to have someone in the chat interact or name something that impacts the effect, there's so much of a delay that it kind of diminishes the magic quality of it, because you could have easily used that delay time to do something, Whereas having a live stream where you're interacting in real time is something that's kind of appealing to me, So I'm going to be checking that out. And a few other projects, trying to do some Zoom shows and stuff. Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with performing effects over Zoom that I couldn't perform in person. you know? So taking advantage of the effects that are made possible by Zoom. Shin and I have been doing a lot of stuff with that, where it's like, where, you know, he's now starting up a series with his YouTube where he's trying to, you know, fool other magicians and they're trying to fool him, you know? And it's interesting where that, some of the methods that we have for that are things that are specifically meant for this kind of platform, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like all of these methods that now we've come up with that we're like, oh, we gotta do this now while we can, while everybody's at home, you know? So that's been another exciting thing, is like doing magic that kind of makes you step outside of the way you would normally think about constructing a show.
I think that's a great strength. Too many people are like, oh, well, how do I do a Zoom show? Well, I'll just do my regular material on Zoom. And then it feels awkward, as opposed to like, no, this works specifically well because it is on camera, because it is in this medium and in this setting.
Yeah, I had a fun thing with doing a performance the other night where I basically had different things in frame with me. And then I told them that I told everybody in the call that I was trying to influence them with everything that they were about to see, whether it was my body language, whether it was my everything that I said, or whether it was everything around me. And then throughout that set, which was about 5 minutes, every object that was in frame ended up being a part of a magic moment in some way, you know? And so it just kind of like using it in trying to like add some kind of theatrical element and justify all the stuff that's around me, even though I'm just sitting in my room. And yeah, it's been fun, like needing to, you know, to step into the frame of mind of, okay, this is what the world's like now. Let's just deal with it, you know, instead of saying I'm not going to perform during this time. You know, I'd rather keep working on that. And then you end up just growing, you know, new strengths. And then you might be inspired by the ideas that work for Zoom, and you might do something that is possible over Zoom that isn't possible in real life, and then really want to adapt that effect to work in real life, which is another thing that we've been doing recently, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Zach, you are very tired.
I can totally tell. Yo,
Zach was like,
you know what's funny is that we've been talking about putting like a guest on for a while now and just trying to find the technical way to do it. And I think this ended up being the best way.
That's part of why we were so excited to have you on first, because we figured, A, we want to hear what you have to think about all this Zoom stuff, and it'll be right after the jam, so it'll be good stuff. But also, we always just enjoy hearing what you have to say, so if we're kind of figuring it out, you know, we know you'll be here for it.
well, I really appreciate that, guys. Do I have that video from that video of Jax? Do I have it?
Oh no, what are you doing?
Oh, I hope so. I don't know what video he's talking about, but
Oh, that's good. Yeah. First of all,
man,
look at how the light
I'm gonna have to go
cascades
through my
perfectly on Blaise's hair right now. Can you lean down again? That was, yeah,
Right
look at
here?
that. Look at the lighting on his hair.
Do you like that when you texted me and said, would you like to be a part of this? I immediately jumped in the shower, took the hat off. God. During this time, so you guys have been working on like magic that's meant for, you've been talking about like things that are more future based. Like you were saying that like you've been kind of spending less time on Zoom magic and more on like theatrical things. Is there anything that you want to talk about that you have cooking up or that you're thinking about for what can work after this?
The big thing is like we ran a big event at DEF CON this past year, and we were accepted to do that again, but obviously like we've been doing a lot of planning and thinking about how is that going to look this year, because a lot of other pieces of that event have pulled out. Vegas just reopened, but we don't have the conference center. Like, so we've been doing a lot of thinking about that, and then a lot of thinking about obviously, I mean, we have our 420 show got postponed, and so we've been thinking about whether that gets moved or just canceled this year, or where we go with that, because we were really looking forward to that event.
I'm confused by all of the reopening that's going on, because I don't really get how we can reopen when there's not a vaccine, because aren't we just going to have another surge of the same thing? I'm curious about what some of your guys' thoughts are on, you know, magic theory as it relates to interaction through video, and like what the differences are in making something feel as magical and as impossible and pure as possible over video, and having people really trust it and engage in the moment, even though they're not there and present with you. You know, like what are some of your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think reaching the same threshold of impossibility is really hard, just because people can't physically inspect an object. People can't look all around and know that there's no accomplice there right behind the camera writing something out to slip you secretly. Like, it's hard to reach that same level of impossibility. It can be done if if you build it right, depending on what the effect is. There's some great sign thing to impossible locations and stuff like that, or predictions. But I think also, and we actually talked about this a little bit in the jam, I think it's an opportunity to get a little bit more kind of absurd, because everything feels so absurd and crazy, and like we're in each other's homes in all these weird ways that, like, yeah, go crazy, do something weird, have fun with it. And then the other piece of that is, again, we're in each other's homes. Do something much smaller and more like intimate and more about that connection, and have the magic. I mean, and this is something we do all the time, but and have the magic much more be in service to that. So it doesn't matter if it's as impossible, because you are sitting there having a face-to-face conversation with someone in a way that you normally could not, or normally would not, perhaps.
I think that I view magic as a technology, magic itself as a technology. And I think that when any new area of technology comes out, so let's say like Bluetooth, for example, it was a very long time before anyone really started utilizing that in the way that it could be. Or so I view this moment right now as just a new element of technology that magicians haven't really thought about explicitly this. And I think that it's just going to open new doors that are possible. Like, imagine if this lasted for years, like everyone would be an expert in this, right? Like, you wouldn't have any novices anymore, really. I mean, there's an old Alvo Stockman effect, which is basically mailing in a prediction. And I think that right now that is still applicable. And it's also very useful, like finding the pieces of stuff from the past that can still work right now, or finding things that are explicitly for this. I think I've talked to you about this, Zach, but I don't know for sure I've talked to Blaise, but it's the Chris Angel thing. I talked to Zach, you know about it, right? The Chris Angel thing with the phone number.
Oh, yeah.
In the video. Blaise, have I talked to you about that?
No.
That is like a perfect thing, but that was literally, I think, 13, 14 years ago now. But basically there was this one where a video literally arrives to my, like someone texts me this video. I open it up, and then I'm watching Chris Angel, and he's like, think about your phone number. And he's like, yeah, you, think about your phone number, you, right now watching me. And he's like, he has these cards, and he like flicks out the first card. He's like, 8. And then he flicks to the next one, 1, 8. And he like spells my whole phone number basically with playing cards. And I'm like, this is my phone number here, and this is crazy. How it worked was, and I haven't seen anything like this since then. How it worked was my friend input my phone number into the video basically, and then sent me a custom link essentially. And like, but that's just such a fun thing that has zero stage application, nothing, never.
Yeah.
But like, that's such a fun thing. It's one thing in one area, but that is so effective in the way it was done. And like, that's something that would be great right now if someone had something.
The other thing that I've found is a lot of social media magicians, as all of their magic shops are closed, as all of their access to these other effects are closing down, as they're running out of ideas, what I found is that I'm seeing so many people just start revealing tricks as their content. And on TikTok, I'm scrolling through my feed, all these people that I don't even follow, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's like 4 tricks just getting revealed in a row. Okay, scroll through. And I'm seeing that as people are running out of ideas for magic effects, they're just starting to reveal stuff. And regardless of the running out of ideas part, or like, bashing anybody, the idea of magic exposure becoming now just a part of normal life, where people going through social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok, where they're seeing content by people they don't follow, that they didn't request to see, and magic is being revealed to them against their will, is kind of a new thing that we've never really had before. Magic tutorials and reveals tend to do much better than magic performances on that platform, especially if you're taking yourself seriously. The magic performances that tend to do best on that are the ones where you're not taking yourself seriously or being silly, because then it feels relatable. But then tutorials tend to do even better, because then people feel like they can do it too. And that increases the relatability. So it helps the algorithm if you're revealing magic effects. I haven't started revealing effects, and I don't plan to, but I feel like it's interesting thinking about the future of magic where I was talking with Shin about this, and he was saying, a while ago, he was saying, like, it would be interesting if people were not like FISM audiences, but a little bit closer to it, where they were more exposed to magic so they could appreciate the difficulty of things, and they can appreciate what is going on and the difficulty of something, especially if it fools them having a certain amount of magic knowledge. It's like, how can we move forward and find a positive out of the fact that now there's rampant magic exposure, and the methods that they're exposing are going to become more and more modern and more practical. It's going to force us to innovate, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about moving forward into a magic era where magic exposure and people are going to just have a more of a sense of the basic methods of magic.
I think that is fantastic. I think that the more people that know, almost, the better. The even better if they try it themselves. Because I think the big part of dissonance that comes with watching a magician is that you, as a person watching magician, you've never been in the magician's shoes. You've never tried to do what they're doing. And it gives you this really skewed perception on what they're trying to do to you. You think they're trying to like fool you. You think they're trying to attack you in some sort of a way, or like, engage you in that way. But like, the way I look at it is this: there's so many magic shows that I've come away from, and someone has messed up a trick or something's gone wrong, right? And then people will take that away from them if they've never tried to do a trick. Whereas if someone watches like a singer and they hit an off note, like they'd be like, oh yeah, they'll get it. They'll immediately start to process it and be like, oh, that is really hard to try to hit these notes and do those things in that certain way, because I know I've tried. Whereas like with a magician, they're like, oh, we just screwed that one up. Like there's no empathetic response because you've never even been close to that. I think the more people that try, the better, honestly.
But I think that is part of the key, is that it's the more people that try. It's not just about knowing, it's about kind of understanding magic a little bit in that way. And that kind of revelation, yeah, I think is super great. But just people going like, oh yeah, there's a deck, you can do something, he just did something with it, like that is not helpful necessarily. But also, to say the same thing I feel like I say every time, one of the advantages of doing magic that is much more about the dramatic and emotional connection and understanding is that the method is less important. I've done effects where people know basically how it works, but because of the structure and the story of the thing, they still enjoy it and find meaning and value in it. So not to harp on that too much, because I think we're all pretty much in agreement on that, but it is always something to remember, especially for anyone going, I can't perform anything. Everyone seems to know how it all works. That's fine. You just change the way that you perform it.
It's becoming where the context of the effect is much more important than the content of the effect. Like in how you structure where you're placing that effect as a part of the story, whether you think of it as a technology, as a tool in order to accomplish something, or you think of it as a prop that illustrates something, or you think of it just as like some kind of narrative piece, like magic being used as a way to further a story rather than what would it be, like means to an end or something. What is the do you know what I'm trying to say? Rather it being like the end all be all in and of itself. Synonym. Basically, like how you structure what's around the magic becomes more important than how that one trick is done. There's that whole 90-10 rule that Eric Mead talked about on Fool Us, the whole idea of how, like, if you show a layman an effect, then if 10% of it doesn't fool them, then they'll say that they weren't fooled, And the whole idea of fooling being the main point of magic, I don't agree with in the first place, but then where he would say magicians, if 10% fools them, they'll say that they were fooled, even though they knew how all of the rest of it was. It's kind of interesting, the idea of, if the fact that exposure is so rampant and that there are millions and millions of people seeing every day how all of the classic basic tricks are being done, it might push people more in that other direction of, they have a basic understanding of how methods are done. So when something fools them, they're even more amazed and astonished than they would have been by something simple like a fire wallet would have in the past.
Like, if you look at the way knowledge gets improved upon. I think that, I don't know, it's really hard to tell with magic, but magic is such a secretive art that like no one is willing to share a lot of things. So you will see things stagnate until like one person has a breakthrough and that's like published, and then everyone does it. Like that's why the magic community experiences like these crazy waves of like changing. Like Darren Brown started introducing the idea of NLP, and then like every mentalist was like doing Darren Brown basically. Like David Blaine comes out and then everyone's doing David Blaine. And it's like, if you look at cardistry as an art that's been around less than, I don't know, like 10 years, I guess you could really even say.
I mean, people were doing flourishes for a while, but it was like, what is that called with the X in it?
XCM, Extreme Card
XCM.
Manipulation. Oh man,
Yeah.
I had that DVD, bro. I had that DVD. But now it advances at such a rapid pace because everyone is explaining everything and everyone's teaching everything and everyone's learning new things. And with every new learner comes a new perspective. And like now their perspective echoes throughout the community, but everyone's learning everything. So everyone is experiencing all this new growth. And like that as a little art form has changed so rapidly within the last couple of years, really, because of that dissemination of knowledge. And like magic, like why... It doesn't make sense. Like everyone does a cups and balls thing, and yet everyone also says this is literally the oldest thing that's been done. Like, how does that make any sense?
It's interesting that people will a lot of times that's I guess one of the reasons why I've always stayed away from the traditional cups and balls is because like everybody always prefaces it with this is like the oldest trick, and then I'm just like, okay, well then why are you doing it? It's been done.
Right, or at least like if it's the oldest trick. I mean, yeah, that's such a tricky one because on the one hand, like they're classics for a reason. On the other hand, yeah, why are you doing something so old, and why are you not putting more of your own spin on it? Because so many people, and some people do, but so many people just do the classic cups and balls. It's like I went to it's like if I don't know, I feel like it's almost the equivalent of like if you went to like a concert and the person played something that everyone learned in their like elementary school piano classes. Or like it is a classic. Well, no, but like even a good song, like one of
that's a perfect
Mozart
comparison. Yeah,
piano sonata or something.
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song, but like everyone.
If every musician you went to see ever always played for release, you'd be like, wow, somebody's gonna start writing new songs.
Right. Well, exactly.
But the thing, Zach, what you said about why have they persisted, I think that there is something there because I think about, it's like a psychological element that magic taps into. And like, it's a lot like fairy tales. When you analyze old fairy tales, the reason why do we still tell these old fairy tales? It's because they speak to us on a subliminal level that no one really understands. And partially they've lasted so long because they speak to us. All the old ones that haven't spread till now aren't good. And so there's something subliminally about the cups and balls, or things appearing and disappearing under like some sort of a concealment thing that taps into us as humans. Like we can't get rid of it because it's too good in a way.
Are you kind of getting at there, Jax, that when people go to a magic show and it's a traditional classical magician performing classical effects, then that performer kind of becomes the embodiment of like the trickster archetype, and that people in their collective unconscious in the audience kind of feel something that it taps into like their attachment to like the character Loki and watching that in Marvel movies or something, and that some people will reject that character as just a villain and some people will become interested in the nature of that character and find it really fascinating. Like, are you saying just because like people have built into them that story of the trickster archetype that like, or even the wizard, the wise old man, the Senex, as like Jungian psychologists would say, like that people have that as just part of the story that lives in their biology, that they're interested in seeing magic?
I knew about 80% of those words, but 20% of them I did not know.
But I mean, not to put words in your mouth, Jackson, but I think you were sort of poking at a part of that, which is that part of that, the reason effect like that have been around for so long and been so persistent is that some part of them does poke something fundamental, innate. In that the idea of seeing, right, the concealment and the revelation, as an old professor of ours used to always talk about, like that kind of cycle is innate in our heads as to how mystery works and as to how life works. And there are archetypes that fit into those cycles and archetypes that express those cycles, and magicians do at times necessarily, and I think for the better, step into those.
It almost makes me think about, like, in your realm more with the DEF CON world, you know, like you think about the role of the gray hat, which is, you know, you're a hacker that's meant to break into things in order to expose their vulnerabilities, you know? And it's like, if the trickster is showing you a flaw in your perception, that's kind of tapping into your humanity and showing you your limits. And that's a kind of a very interesting, almost beautiful thing, you know? Like,
and then even
interesting role.
And then even with the wise old man and CNEX, like oftentimes if you think about like a platonic dialogue sort of thing where you draw someone into, you have a word that you really like that is very long, and it means like asking a question to elicit a certain response that will help the person understand that point better. Well, I cannot remember that. Meutic. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. It's basically like it's a word from Socratic seminars, you know, because like if you had a Socratic discussion, then you're asking a question in order to elucidate some latent consciousness. Somebody already knew, they had felt that thing, but they had never really articulated it themselves. Instead of you just putting it into words, you ask them a question that makes them put it into words, and then it ends up elucidating the wisdom so much more to them.
Mm-hmm.
What were you saying?
Yeah. Well, I think that, yeah, in many ways, the role of the trickster, the role of the CNEX, the wise man, the role of the gray hat hacker, even is all about doing that from different angles, is artfully and playfully and hopefully in a slightly safe way, even if it doesn't always feel comfortable, asking that question, posing that question in a way where you have to answer it either because it is a jest that is being played on you, or because the wise man has put you in this kind of riddled position where you have to, you know, answer the riddle, or because you're a hacker who's been paid to do that, but you are asking that question of, well, what if we did this? And you go, oh, well, I guess I'd have to do that. Oh, right. Like that kind of moment.
That's what magic is making people ask questions, you know? It's like breaking through that barrier, you know, and forcing them to have to be like, how is that possible? It's like, if that's possible, then maybe the entire way I've been conceiving the world isn't exactly how I thought it was. Your bread is extraordinary, Zach.
Oh, thank you.
You can taste the love that's gone into it.